I didn't want to record stuff I didn't like. And I'd never reissued stuff I didn't like. The whole record business was just booming when I got into it. I just loved it. It was just, to me, it was an adventure. Some people like to go big game hunting or something. You know, I like to hunt records and people's stories, you know. You know, I came to this country in 1947, and I was sent to this private school near Carpinteria, California. And in the afternoons, I must have been in my last year there, when I was supposed to be at soccer practice. I would sit in my room, and I listened to this little radio station in Santa Paula, where they played a brief Mexican hour in the afternoons, I guess when the workers came home or something. But that's what hit me first. That's when it first made me aware that this music was out there. When I finally started to make records, you know, again, every time I drove from here to Texas, you know, I'd drive to various towns that we could either hear Mexican stations or, you know, I just loved it, but I knew I couldn't sell it. When I started Arhoolie, I forgot what year it is, that I've somehow met this fellow Rumel Fuentes. He lived in Eagle Pass, and they took me to hear the Pingüinos.
Cantares de corrido, señores, hoy les voy a recordar. Una historia conocida, yo les voy a relatar.
That's the Pingüinos right there. Yeah, I don't know if you can take a picture of it later on. This was in the cantina where we first heard them, you know.
That's one of the best album covers ever. As far as I'm concerned.
I agree. I'm sure I scared the shit out of these people. You know? Who is this Rinche Cobarde? You know? That became one of my favorite phrases in corrido. Los Rinches Cobardes, those cowardly rangers.
Esos rinches maldecidos los mandó el gobernador a proteger los melones de un rico conservador. Mr. Canali, señores, es el mal gobernador que aborrece al mexicano y se burla del dolor.
So I was really into it with Rumel and that kind of thing, you know. And I think that's what gave me the idea of doing Chulas Fronteras with Les Blanc, because he was, I forgot when he did the Mans Lipscomb film and the Lightning film. It was somewhat before then, slightly, I think. And I just thought everybody's doing blues, you know, but nobody pays any attention to this incredible music, which is such a rich text heritage, you know, of especially these corridos, which at that time were still very truthful generally, you know. They were really telling true stories. Like eventually, you know, when we were down in the valley doing chulas, I had met Ramiro Cavazos, who was the bajo player with Los Norteños, and because I really was interested in getting them. And then I asked him, you know, would you know by any chance how I could get a hold of Los Alegres de Terran? Because those are the ones I really wanted. You see, I wanted Narciso Martinez and Lydia Mendoza and Santiago Jimenez Sr., and Los Alegres de Terran. That's what I started out wanting for chulas, you see, to document those people because I felt they were really the heart and soul of the beginnings of that kind of music, you know.
Este amor apasionado anda todo alborotado por volver.
And I'll never forget that Ramiro Cavazos, at some gathering we had, he introduced me to his wife. This is Señor Cris, el fanático de música norteña. And because, you know, nobody had ever met any creature like me who was knowledgeable about their records but couldn't even speak Spanish, and just was totally enamored by the sound of this music and the voices, you know, the duetos.
Una lágrima virtiendo, y desde entonces no hay consuelo ni esperanza para mí.
It wasn't until I went to make chulas that I really got to meet her, because then I looked her up, and by that time I also realized what an important person she was.
Ausente yo me encuentro del ser que tanto adoro, de mi madre querida que es mi único tesoro, de mi madre querida que es mi único.
Because she didn't just sing the kind of cantina songs that I like. She did everything under the sun, you know, from old wonderful just canciones that her mother taught her, you know, and of course boleros. But Lydia, she would take requests, you know, just like that, and she would just, boom, they would pop into her head.
Eres un canalla, eres un malvado, eres un mal hombre.
When I asked Mrs. Meir, who was the widow of Jaime Wolf, I said, who would you suggest that I try to record? I said, Chris, there's one guy, he's got charisma, he looks like a movie star. That's Flaco Jimenez.
Desde Laredo a San Antonio, yo he venido a casarme con mi chencha. Y no he podido por ser mojado, pues para todo me exigen la licencia.
So part of it is publishing new recordings, like Los Pingüinos, like the Mexican series, like the Border series, like the Música Raza and whatever
Well,
else.
but that is definitely a very small aspect. I was really intrigued by making this old music available, you see. And I had already got experience because I had the Blues Classics label that I reissued old blues 78s, and the Old Timey label where I reissued old Cajun music and old country music. I remember Ed Denson, who was my friend, this was the time of Mao Zedong. He said, Chris, don't call it bootlegging. This is not what you're doing. We're liberating the people's music.
Para enriquecer patrones, hacer sudor en la frente, para ser ricos más ricos, se empobrece más la gente.
Who was Guillermo Hernandez? What was his?
Okay, Guillermo Hernandez, he was working on his degree here at UC Berkeley. When we posted a note at the Chicano Study Center here at UC Berkeley, you see, that we were making a film about border music. If there were any Mexican American or Chicanos, as they were beginning to be called in the 70s, who might want to take a look at this and help us, since we felt it would really be to our benefit to have that kind of feedback.
Chicano, soy Chicano, 'cause I'm brown and I'm proud and I'll make
first of all, he became totally enamored by these corridos that I had on old 78s. And I'll never forget, he pulled one out, but it was totally beat up. But it was a part 1 and 2 of a corrido. And he picked up that record, and I asked him afterwards, Guillermo, why did you pick that record? He said, Chris, because it was so worn. It obviously meant a lot to the people who bought it. First of all, he continued his real devotion to the corrido, really. But he was down at UCLA, and he started these corrido conferences, you know. And it was the first time that I think really academics who were interested in corridos got together with the people who created this stuff and the audience that liked it, you know, which was miles apart.
Asimismo es también patente que el corrido mantiene profundas raíces tradicionales de una época popular con continuidad histórica, estética y social. Que nos digan algo de cómo ven ellos el corrido desde atrás de los instrumentos y enfrente del público. Algunas experiencias fundamentales en sus vidas, perspectivas.
Yo no estudio corrido, yo vivo del corrido y convivo con el corrido desde hace 8 años. He hecho canciones que han salido en libros, canciones de protesta, de muertes de campesinos. He hecho corrido para políticos de campaña, he hecho corridos de gente que han matado, de mujeres infieles. He grabado corridos revolucionarios, he cantado corridos del campo. Hablan de diferentes corridos. Yo creo que el corrido es uno solo. O sea, diferentes épocas, de narcos, de héroes, de revolución. El corrido siempre es corrido. Son diferentes los casos, diferentes las épocas.
Voy a dar los pormenores de nuestra revolución, recordando a los señores que murieron a traición.
And so when it came time for Professor Guillermo Hernandez to call up the Tigres, and of course he spoke with Jorge Hernandez, who's a brilliant guy, and he apparently persuaded them, you know, we consider the music that you play and that you make a living from, those songs, is really the literature of your people, of the working classes, of the common people. And I think they were really impressed by that. They said, here is academia, the biggest university in California, studying the songs that we make a living from as the literature of our people.
No soy americano, pero comprendo el inglés. Yo lo aprendí con mi hermano, al derecho y al revés. A cualquier americano, luego temblará mis pies. Cuando apenas era un niño, huérfano a mí me dejaron. Nadie me hizo ni un cariño, a mi hermano lo mataron, ni a mi esposa Carmelita, cobardes la asesinaron. En busca de oro y riqueza, al indio pobre y sencillo lo defendí con fiesta, y buen precio los cherifes
los avarientos yo les quite su dinero.
And some years later, Guillermo Hernandez and I were having something to eat at the, I forgot, some kind of Mexicali Rose here in Oakland. And this guy walks up to us and he pointed at me, "Aren't you Mr. Strachwitz?" I said, "Yeah, that's my name." "Well, you know, I was a student of your German class in Los Gatos. You were a terrible teacher, but we heard the best damn music in your class that I've ever heard."
Vengo a vengar a mi esposa y lo vuelvo a repetir. Carmelita tan hermosa como la hicieron